all, I want to thank the community. I want to thank staff, their presentations, the legal advice. I want to thank my council members for considering this. I'm going to answer some of the questions that were raised. First of all, why rush? From my perspective, and I'm going to remind you all what my perspective is. I'm a Mexican-American woman who grew up in Los Angeles in the 60s. From my perspective, and in regards to who is the one that got busted, I do want to ask our police for the records of who got cited. My understanding is from looking at Oakland and Los Angeles, they're going back 20 years to find out if there was any disproportionate citing for cannabis-related offenses in regards to the skin color of the people that were, in fact, cited. So I want to know what records we have on that, or if there's any area of town that received more citations. And that is what other cities are looking at. And I agree that that is something we need to at least look at the data. So we are making an informed decision in regards to if there is a response required, or at least that should be considered for that, as other cities are. So in regards to the question, why rush? I don't think this is rushing. I think that our country has been dealing with this for over 50 years, and some of you would say 60 years. And I will submit that our country has done a very poor job with this issue. And that connects to my next issue that many of you spoke about, your personal journeys. And I have heard from people in the community in regards to their children, themselves, their parents, needing medicinal cannabis to actually be able to participate in life. It is, and that leads to, as many of you know, I am a 10-year breast cancer survivor, triple negative, it impacts women of color, high fatality rate, very aggressive chemo, and with that comes side effects. With that comes doctors, oncologists prescribing medications that in fact are very detrimental to our bodies. So why does it matter? Why does it matter? So all of you that can stand up here and say, you are not that person, you have your health, so that driving to Oakland doesn't matter. It should be something we can all do. I'm going to ask you all to close that door. Thank you. Honestly, a lot of us cannot do it. A lot of us cannot do it. I heard many of you say you care about education, and yet then you say, well, other cities have deliveries coming to our town, so it doesn't matter. You're going to be able to get it. What you're not going to get is that conversation that is, in fact, what needs to happen. And should someone that has impaired health have to go to Oakland to have that conversation? Should they have to have that conversation with someone they don't know? I also support preference for local ownership and employees. Why? Because it matters. I want them to be able to have a conversation without the stigma. I also want our country to figure out how to move forward with medical research so that we all know how to do the best we can. So my position on all of this, 600 feet. Why? Because it's the state law. It is not reckless. It is not it is a quote-unquote minimum, but it is done with measure. When they are suggesting 600 feet, there is a determination by our state that that is sufficient. And when you look at our map, at the 1,000 feet, and I'm sure if you include other things that you want to measure from, we will not have any retail establishments on Bay Farm. I do not think that is appropriate. Why? because access does matter. Going to someone in person does matter. And yes, we can keep it safe. And in fact, any of you that think cannabis is not here, you are wrong. It is here. If you ask your friends who has a card, who is using, your friends use it. Please do not fool yourself into thinking that no one that you talk to uses. It's not, so from my position, it's not a rush. We are way behind. Should we, in fact, be measured? We are measured. Member Odie brought his first referral. Someone asked this question, who brought the referrals? Member Odie brought the first one in November. What was the vote? My recollection is, and who made the motion? I actually made the motion on the referral. It was a 3-1-1 is my recollection to hear the referral, with myself, Member Odie, and Member Mataresi voting to hear it, with Member Ashcraft, my recollection, voting not to, and Member Daysog abstaining. That was in November. Come May, I felt like we actually needed to move it along. And I'm going to use that, move it along. So I brought another referral. It actually coincides with my treatments that I go to the Cancer Center for every 6 months. And as the clock ticks, and I'm thinking, why do people like me? I go to the Cancer Center. If any of you want to join me, I'll be going again in November here at Cancer Center. You can see stories like this, and I'm going to explain what it is. Last time I was there was a gentleman, African American, receiving chemo. He had a caretaker with him. He was in a wheelchair. They could not move him to a non-wheelchair to receive his chemo. He could not really speak. He had to have the caretaker speak for him. The saddest part was, okay, so when I did my chemo almost 10 years ago, I had what they call dense dosing. I went every 3 weeks instead of a traditional 4. I do not now, my current treatments, every 6 months, which means I go to the Cancer Center every 6 months. At the end of his treatment, the nurse said, "I will see you tomorrow." There are cancer patients that go every single day. We do have serious problems, and it's not just cancer. There are other illnesses, we heard it tonight, other medical conditions that can get relief this way. I don't think it's appropriate for Alameda to I do agree with the term compassionate care. These are our loved ones. They are parts of our community. And I know and I trust that Alameda can do it responsibly. I also trust, I was former PTA Council President for 2 years. I was on our school board for 6 years. I am confident, and yes, I do want to work with our schools. I want to educate, but we have teachers that do that currently because they know students are offered marijuana in this town. There is access, and we have students every day that say no. Yes, and we have parents every day that step up and teach their children what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, whether it be in regards to marijuana and alcohol. And some of you, I know, partake in alcohol and yet are thinking that we can have. So when I moved up here, I was a little surprised to see a liquor store right across the street from Alameda High. I was also surprised to see a liquor store not very far from another one from Alameda High. I was also surprised to see how many bars within walking distance to both of our high schools and other schools in town. But you know what I was told? Trish, they were kind of grandfathered in. It's the Alameda way. So that is something that this town has done. And teachers and principals and school board members and parents all know it. To me, every day when our children walk past those, they do it responsibly. Please do not ever discount the intelligence of our youth. Our youth can, in fact, also walk past dispensaries, and by that I mean brick and mortar dispensaries. I think the number 3 by staff is appropriate. I think it is appropriate to have one on each side of the main island and one on Bay Farm. I also, on-site consumption, I also support that. I think it is actually complements our ordinance of no smoking because we honestly, I would prefer that people that want to smoke have a site that is legal instead of having them smoke. And you all know what smoking in our parks, smoking at our beach, smoking behind Crab Cove, smoking on our streets. You know it. Let's give them a safe place that is legal to smoke. And them, as in people that do look like yourself. I did, in fact, have someone that I highly respect say, Trish, I didn't see anyone that looks like us support this. Look in this room. This is representative of Alameda. This is us. Deliveries, my preference would be to have dispensaries, brick and mortar in this town sooner rather than later because I don't think it is best practice to have deliveries only. And we cannot stop those. Other cities, you can order from a dispensary outside the city. They are driving it through this town. They are driving it through this town with product. Our city, we have a proposal for a permit that includes GPS, the $3,000 regulations that would make it safer. And we cannot put our proposals on these other cities. We could offer a safer alternative, and encourage our residents to purchase from our delivery services that then have safeguards put on them. And I would prefer that. Please do not kid yourself that you are stopping deliveries to this town. You are not. You would only make it so it's not regulated the way the Alamedans want to regulate it so that we can, in fact, have it as safe as possible. Economic Development Department, I believe that this should go through the Economic Development Department like other business permits. I think it is critical that it go through fire and it go through police. I don't think it is the best, I don't think it's appropriate to have it go through police to begin with because I am concerned that, first of all, our police have jobs. They are very busy, and I want them to be dealing with criminals. Guess what? Our state has legalized this. This is no longer criminal. So it's not appropriate to have a police chief in charge of it. It should, in fact, go through Economic Development Department like any other permit. And when it requires oversight, yes, it goes through police and fire, but not with our chief being in charge of this. Local ownership, I absolutely support. I think it's critical, and I do want to know the data, if we have any data that would support an equity policy like other cities have in regards to especially people of color and certain areas in town. Commercial benefit fund, I'm fine with that. We have many uses, many causes. You all know that. I could ask you all, raise your hand who supported a cause in this town. Every hand's going to go up. I know it. We all know we have many causes in town. I'm happy to fund them. 600 feet buffer, I think that's appropriate in regards to schools and youth centers, but our state requires. I support. Community education, yes. And banking, that is an issue. I would encourage each one of you, especially those of you that have big concerns, reach out to everyone that's running for governor. Make sure they have a platform to require that they will, in fact, commit to having a banking system in our state. Other states that have done this issue have, in fact, implemented their own banking systems. We need it too. So, unfortunately, here in Alameda, we will be limited, but make sure, especially all of you that are, this is your hot issue. In fact, I've done this. We had Antonio Villagrosa show up in Oakland. I went to the meeting, I asked that question. Critical. The side effect from other drugs, opioids, we know that. You can look at that statistic if you don't think that we should try something different. It is critical that we as a society figure out how to do medical cannabis. Advertising, we don't have billboards in this town. I would also, and I'm sure our state will be having high safeguards on this, but I would oppose advertising for this. Somehow word gets out. Products that appeal to children. Okay, I do think Alameda can do it better. I am in support of having manufacturing. I am not in support of manufacturing that appeals to children. I think it's critical that we raise that bar, do it well. I do want containers, and that was in the proposed ordinance. I am fine with trying to come up with safe packaging. Okay, another reason why I think it's critical that we do this, drug dealers, when people buy on the street, they get exposed to a lot more than cannabis. It could be guns, it can be drugs that have serious consequences. When people use cannabis, it can be for health reasons, it can also be for recreation, but no, they shouldn't have to buy it on the street. And we can, again, to me, this is an improvement, a serious improvement, because unfortunately, people that sometimes you go to buy, you can have something go terribly wrong. And we have had people in this town that end up with serious injuries, if not worse, from having a drug just being there, drug deal go wrong. Insurance requirements, that was discussed by a speaker. Thank you for being here. That should appease a lot of these concerns. Vaping, in regards to adding it to the smoking ordinance, I actually am not sure about that. I know why, because I think vaping is actually used to help people stop smoking. But to me, that is something that would come back to council, and we can have the community weigh in on that issue. Okay, so I'm not sure if I've hit all these issues, if I hit everything, but I am supportive of, so initially going into this, I was thinking I would not support commercial cultivation in town. However, we had a speaker that spoke about where is it being cultivated now, unfortunately, sometimes in our national forests. So you know what, I'm okay with having cultivation in town, and that'll just be something else that I think we have to figure out the best practice for doing it. There's so many businesses connected to it that so I'm going to support all of them, and I also so the only other issue I think I might not have touched on is labor peace. The state has said 20-1. I think that is sufficient. Again, I would defer to our state. I don't think we need to lower it. And I want to make sure that we are not putting up barriers just for the sake of, and I already saw shaking heads. We had business people stand up here and say that they actually take pretty darn good care of their employees compared to other retail businesses in town. So so I think there is, in fact, another way that you don't, in fact, have to require. So the state is already saying 20-1. I'm fine with that. I think we can also ask, and we've heard our businesses are already offering higher pay than if, for instance, working in a lot of our retail in town. So I'm happy to entertain, how to make sure that we get, if we think we want to do that for one business. And in regards to minimum wage, I brought a referral for that a long time ago, and it is something that I think we do need to look at. So I actually don't know if you can look at it in regards to just one industry, but in regards to the labor piece, I'm comfortable with 20-1. I'm less comfortable with having people have to go off island to go to a dispensary there, and I'm even less comfortable with having deliveries be made where we ourselves are not offering the education and offering the education in a respectful manner that we think would work. If I didn't already say it, I see some people in the audience that spoke to on-site consumption. Yes, I support that too. All right, so now, Member Odie.
Can I just add a couple things? 'Cause
Yes.
some things came up, and I wanted to make sure that staff knows that I agreed with some of the comments my two colleagues
Go
made
ahead.
here. One thing I didn't mention, I do think to the extent we can depoliticize the selection process, I would like to see that